Good evening, everyone. My name is Kirsten Cruiser, and I served as the editor-in-chief for the 10th Muse this semester. Welcome to the launch party for Volume 16. The 10th Muse is a student-led literary magazine here at Clark. We accept all kinds of work, whether it be poetry, prose, art, photography, and so much more. We have a lot planned for this evening. First, we will have a segment for people who are attending the party virtually. Then, we will have some in-person readings by submitters, as well as communication students and Clark cast and crew students. Before we begin, I would like to thank Catherine Fisher for her endless support of the magazine. I would also like to thank the 10th Muse's faculty advisors, Eric Wold and Steve Bellamy, as well as the students who helped me with marketing the magazine last semester: Chloe Grass, Angelina Bauman, Abby Pierce, and Dominic Gaspy. Finally, I would like to thank the communication students and Clark cast and crew for being so willing to read for all of us tonight. Once again, I appreciate all for your attendance tonight to support Volume 16's release. We hope you enjoy tonight's readings, which will begin with some contributors who have been nice enough to join us virtually to read their work featured in this year's volume.
Sorry about that. Okay, yeah. Well, thank you guys for having me. Honored to be here. I do have to leave a bit early just because I woke up with a cold this morning, not feeling my best. But I'll just be reading the first 4 paragraphs of my work because it is a bit long. So, when I take the train, I feel like I'm suffocating. The confined metal cage of the car, the closeness of the bodies writhing with one another, it all makes me feel like a trapped animal. As I looked out at the sooty, anemic walls flying behind the windows without a care, I wished I could share in that attitude. The melodies of my music were enough even to distract from my contempt. I sat in this enclosure, contemplating my distaste, playing with the loose threads at the end of my sleeve while listening to a tune with no hook in sight. The man next to me barked on and on through his cell phone about some meeting coming up. I watched as an old lady tying a scarf around her ears. Another woman pulled headphones out of some mystery pocket. I was doing the same, eyes glued to a spot on the floor, intermittently turning my music up and down to account for its passionate fluctuations. At last, the speed began to drop and the jingle of an approaching station managed to barge past the barricade of my own music. We stopped, loud phone man got off, and so did everyone else. I was the only one in the car, but I had a few more stops. There I stayed as the doors closed and we whirred on. Then I saw it on the floor, or more accurately, I heard it on the floor before I got a chance to turn up the volume again. It was sliding, back and forth, to and from. I paused the song and took off my headphones. A small journal barely the size of my hand was whipping across the train as if it were a ballerina. It would have been easier to ignore if it hadn't just slammed itself into the side of my boot. Thank you.
Hey, thank you for making this happen tonight, for taking my poetry, and I look forward to seeing the new issue. The first poem is called Dance Land, and I wrote it after our son told us he was going to be getting married. So it's called Dance Land. Imagine your lives are a dance land, a wondrous place of sparkling lights, of red and blue and yellow lights, circling the walls and floor, of upbeat music, the kind that makes you move your bodies, your feet, your hearts, makes you shake your hair crazily. It's a place where people come to twirl and conga, to be happy, to be with you. And there you both are, at the center of it all. There's a spotlight and your kind of music, and you dance, swirling, swinging, dipping, sashaying, and always, always holding hands, never letting go. Happiness, it's on your faces, in your hearts. We can see it, you feel it, know its presence, and you never want to let go of that either. Then the music slows and you slow too, cheek to cheek, a warm embrace, feet circling slowly, eyes locked on one another, then a hand to the cheek, brushing softly, lovingly, and there is applause, not just because you were good at dancing, but because the whole place sees your happiness, sees it as a blessing in your lives and maybe ours too. You circle the room in this slow dance, in this dance land of your lives, this happiness, this love, and this is the way it will be all the rest of your lives. Um, so I took part in some of the resistance events here in Sioux Falls where I live. Um, and this poem I started to write last year after um, a march in support of the Fifth Amendment. The march went through much of downtown Sioux Falls. The poem is called Coiled. I want to tell you serious things because these are serious times. A lawyer standing on rocks near the river, listing ways the Fifth Amendment is being broken, and a man in the crowd around her yelling, "Bring back Kilmar." The river moving past like life itself these days, cold, dark, as if it could take you away forever. A woman, too, with blue and yellow hair, some of it shaved to the scalp. She held a sign with Latin words which said, "Don't let the bastards grind you down." She said it was a saying from The Handmaid's Tale. How do you make such a stand these days? I wanted to ask her, but the march had moved. Yes, a march, a serious march on a serious night. Loud words and angry signs, seething people looking for soothing, not to be placated, but assured. Assured there was still time, assured of a belief in resistance. Which reminds me, I just finished reading a book about the French resistance in World War II. Regular people with the will, the courage to do something beyond the regular. Could the people on this march do the same? Some sang a patriotic song, and some called for a president to lose his job. There was always the river and always the worry that a picture of your face could end up in the hands of darkness. Yet the march was long and winding, like an anaconda through city streets. It had a beginning and an end, yet the middle was alive and forever on the move. And I guess they've granted me time to read the third poem that's in the issue. And this is about getting older and some of the effects that come with that. And it's called Like the Trees They Cut Down. My waking is fast, my moving is slow. A lurch to the bathroom, a hunched crawl to the kitchen. Years ago, a doctor, when I went in for rotator cuff injury, told me not to bother with surgery. Why not? I already had arthritis in the shoulder, he said, beads of swelling along the bone, the joint. In disbelief, I scolded him for such a scare. But he was right, and now it spreads wider and deeper. My fingers, my back, knees, all of it bending and crunching me, all of it an ache that stretches and lotions do not fix. I tried acupuncture. The needles do not hurt, but the relief does not last. Someone I know suggests weed, or at least edibles. Someone else says take the right kind of bath. When I was young, I could ride my bicycle the length of a day, country roads, past small churches and long driveways on farms where I knew the old couples. I could run along the river, end the night with games of kick the can. When I was young, now I lose my hair, my strength, the ability to sit for the length of a TV show. I remember the way the elm trees formed canopies over my small town streets, like royalty gathered for a festival. But they cut the trees down long ago, disease and age. Here I am, something like the trees. Who has the saw? Who has the relief? Thank you.
There we go. I'd like to thank 10th Muse for including me once again in the magazine. And a particular shout out to Katie Fisher, who once upon a time was a classmate of mine, back when we were both somewhat younger. The gift. I seem not to have the gift for joy. Contentment I can manage for decent lengths of time, even happiness occasionally. But joy, I think I remember it perhaps in the early days of my second marriage, but perhaps not. Does joy have to be unexpected? Can anticipation be or lead to joy? And what about ecstasy? With or without Hedy Lamarr or Teresa of Avila, ecstasy appears to be beyond me. I've seen Teresa's face in Santa Maria della Vittoria, turned up to God, radiating sublime post-orgasmic bliss. Neither God nor sex brings me to that. I enjoy sex, but it doesn't take me out of myself, and I can't find a God who satisfies. Why can't I feel the joy I see enacted on museum walls, on The Price is Right, at games where the home team scores a goal? It seems to be around me, but not in me. Do other people see me as broken? Maybe they talk about it, not with me. I feel no inner chasm. Would I? Pretending to laugh makes folks happier. Should I jump up and scream when my team gets a goal? Would I remember to do that? At the last game, I didn't. If I perform joy long enough, will it become real? It worked with other habits, politeness, honesty. Can I identify the feeling, be swept up and away with happiness, forget all doubts, submerge myself in the moment? Can I learn that skill? Over the years, I have written a number of Bible stories, and well, I'm sure you'll recognize this one, The Calf. They came to me, heads of tribes, asking, where do we turn for help? Show us the God who took us out of Egypt, that we may pray. I taught, patient, what my brother had told me, that God is everywhere, in a flame or a whirlwind or anything he wants. They turned away, muttering about invisible gods, and where could you worship them? What kind of God has no image, no temple, no priest? But I am the priest, chosen by my brother in the name of the nameless, shapeless God. The leaders came again. See the lightning on the mountaintop? Your brother is dead, struck down by his new God. Lead us now. Give us a God we can recognize. What should I do? Bring me the gold, I said, the Egyptian gold, a pile of treasure the size of an ox. And Moses still had not returned. So I made them a heifer without stain, of purest gold, anything to keep them at the base of that mountain, wandering that desert without a leader, without skills, without a God, was death. I had to save them. And over the years, I have written, I guess, very nearly a book's worth of poems as letters to various people I have known over the years. Peggy Roth was my first boss when I entered the publishing business. Dear Peggy, every time I look at that Giotto print, St. Francis and the Birds, the one I lifted from your office after your funeral, I think of how you invented me. You didn't mean to. I could type and keep the files on slush and could learn to tell good from awful. Enough for your job, for the job as your assistant. But you tried us, all the fledglings where you were the executive editor, gave us the rope to hang or weave, guiding us as gentle as St. Francis. Let us build a career in publishing or not. when the managing editor walked down the cubicles asking if anyone knew anything about science fiction, I was ready to edit. And that was the next 25 years, and the next 25 too. All that work with words, all rises from your faith in my untested eye for text, in my ability to hear your unspoken sermon. Some of you may know the name Thomas M. Dish, poet, novelist, playwright, critic, and about town. This is the second of two poems I wrote as letters to him. And there are a great many names in here, and if you don't recognize some of them, they are all in Wikipedia. Dead Letter Office, Thomas M. Dish, 2. Dear Tom, I had met Chip Delaney and you and Charlie, but no one else at that party at West Beth you dragged me to. By then I knew a bunch of science fiction people, so meeting the Emschwillers was easy enough, and I barely knew who Marilyn Hacker was, so I wasn't impressed until I started reading her years later. On the way home, we ran into Richard Howard, and you introduced me. Working in publishing, later film, I grew used to meeting household names, writers, actors, one baseball player. I wrote an essay about the time Kurt Vonnegut roared at me on the phone. I've got a couple of Norman Mailer stories. I heard Helen Hayes tell an old joke to an archbishop. Does anyone remember Helen Hayes? Probably not. People I worked for and with. Now everyone is friends with everyone on Facebook. Knowing people is as fluid as bourbon. Relationships build on a foundation of likes and retweets. Not like us, getting drunk in that bar on 13th Street and outlining a surreal Broadway musical. At breakfast in a Soho cafe, a tourist couple points and asks me, is he famous? I recognize Wallace Shawn and meditate briefly on the nature of fame. Have the tourists seen My Dinner with Andre, The Princess Bride? Somehow they know his face. His is a recognizable face, almost. He has been on television, in movies, in public view. Is he famous? Are there famous character actors? Ned Glass, Harold Gould, Clara Peller? Is a writer famous if she can walk the streets without being asked for autographs? In New York and Nashville, people are inured to celebrity, proud to be polite. But could Oprah go to the Piggly Wiggly in Paducah without signing a few groceries? Doesn't she owe us that after we have spent so much time and devotion making her famous? Fame comes and goes. You could look up Godfrey of Bouillon, Ducky Medwick, even Tom Dish. Even I was famous on TV for 46 minutes. Was that fame? It certainly wasn't popularity. Now I am no one, a forgotten editor, a very minor poet. Nothing rubbed off from anyone I met. Fame isn't transferable. It must be earned or tricked. Even then, it rarely lasts. And in 20 years, 50, gathering what passes for dust in internet archives. Only the impression on human memory matters, the way we change some tiny corner of the world, as your example and friendship changed mine.
Good evening, everyone. Something like that. I'll figure it out. Can you hear me? Yes, there we go. Thank you for being here. Tonight, we celebrate volume 16 of the 10th Muse, and likely the last volume given the discontinuation of Clark's English and graphic design programs. But before we get to the readings, I want to say a few things about this publication and how it came together and why that matters. Upon the structure, this volume is organized into 8 sections, not by genre or alphabetically, but by emotional and conceptual territory. We move from openings and thresholds into tenderness, through grief work, into questions of identity, and then outward to records and letters, community, memory, public witness, and finally, bodies and time, motion, return, and presence. The goal was to create an invisible architecture, something you feel rather than you see. A reader moving through this volume encounters recurring themes, small acts of care, the weight of memory, the ethics of witnessing the fragility of institutions. These echoes aren't accidental. They're the result of listening closely to what the work itself was asking for. For the artists over the years, the 10th Muse has been the home for Clark students, alums, faculty, and writers from around the world. You trusted us with your poems, your stories, your images. The work was personal, political, experimental, sometimes vulnerable. That trust is not something we took lightly. This publication exists because you took the risk to share it. What this volume represents is a fitting final volume for us. It honors the lineage of the 10th Muse while also serving as a document of institutional change. The balance we've struck, personal, political, local, universal, the grief and gratitude that matter. This volume will matter to the contributors and to the future readers trying to understand what was lost when Clark's programs were cut. And finally, on my co-collaborator and conspirator, Dr. Steve Bellamy, editor, advocate, and the person who kept this thing alive when it would have been easier to let it go. Steve, has been a true pleasure. Thank you. Now let's hear from the people who made this volume what it is. Let's get on with the show.
Written in November, a poem by George Freck. Clouds gather as if they were trying to fight off this inclement weather. But those pellulant clouds vanish with a sudden breeze, and the sky remains gray. It will snow soon. Winter is the executioner of flowers and leaves, but nature feels no remorse. Ethics are a human invention, which in our fear of death, we apply to what happens, or to what might have been. Nature can never be wrong, and in its changing moods, it will give us no rest.
Hello. This is The Unpleasant Canticles, number 3 by George Freak. On this starless night, everything is motionless. The sky is as black as a burial chamber. The moon is a thin slit. In a leafless oak tree, a heron's nest is empty. The family has departed, with freedom unavailable to me. Once I'd have tried to find a symbol for a poem, but I know little of herons or of oak trees, and I can't really care. They mean nothing now to me. The Unpleasant Canticles, number 4. Days upon days, as the clouds are caught in branches, like words in a poem that has no meaning. When I stare at the sky, uneasiness fills my mind. Scholars in their different departments study mysteries which change with each new spring. Riddles without answers are terrifying things. I know the sum of 1 + 1, the distance to the sun, and I think the silence of the grave is not a pleasant repose. As men continue to dream, leaves fall from the trees, but then they vanish with the first autumn breeze. Thank you.
LG, you are the one who turned my night today. You brought the sun into my starless sky. Mistakenly, I thought you'd always stay. But little did I know the end was nigh, that God had planned to take your life away, so you could be with him in heaven on high. No matter where I go or what I do, my life now seems so empty without you. No more your hand will gently brush my cheek and wipe away the tears when I am sad. No more the smile, the games of hide and seek, the rippling laughter when we both felt glad. No one to curb my fears of lightning strike. No more good times for daughter with her dad. And only when my earthly life is done, you'll come to fill my sky with endless sun.
Economy shopping list. Times are hard. So toothpaste will be valued and the mail will be the cheapest I can find. Liver for lunch instead of steak. My hubby won't be happy, but never mind. I'll have to see what cereal's on special. Perhaps they'll have 2 for 1. Air fresheners some would deem extravagant, but I need just one to damp the smell gone. Waffles. I know the Owens brand's not expensive, more healthy for the kids than the loads of chips. Washing up liquid. It just has to be a fairy and grapes, but I'll have to find some without pibs. Biscuits. Now, do I really need them? We all like dunking them in tea. Cucumbers. I think I have a tin of salmon, so that's what I'll do quite nicely for my tea. I'll scrub out the pickles. I don't need it. I have some onions left from Christmas anyway. But I will have to invest in a huge tub of Vanish. With luck, I will wash all my worries away. The elephant and the snake. I slither and I slide along the ground, sneaking steadily into the trees, while you, with a snake-like trunk, smell and taste everything. I sloth my skin as I grow, a skin. The poachers hunt for shoes and handbags in a world beyond our own. But I have venom that will kill and camouflage to hide, so I'm sure I'll survive. Oh, you're right, you are my friend. That I use my trunk to taste and smell. I have strength to push down trees, turn over Land Rovers and Jeeps. But at last, I can't fight the guns that kill me for my tusk. Men sell them on again and sculpt them. But I'm far too big to hide, too wide. I can't help but think that like my ancestors, the mammoth, I soon too will be extinct. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you for having me. Thank you for being here tonight. I'll be reading a short section of Sons of Fire by John Leahy. Trinity Site, July 16, 1945. They looked out at the desert together. There was no movement, no birds, no insects, nothing to bear witness but the glass in the crater. The melted sand where something holy and monstrous once stood, and maybe still stood. I wonder what it would feel like, Oppenheimer said, the moment the bomb drops. If the man flying the plane will know, if it feel it in his bones, that the world is ending beneath him. He will not feel a thing. He will have orders. A long silence. The sky began to fade from steel to orange as the sun lowered. It was beautiful in the way that made beauty meaningless. Someday they'll tell stories about this place, Oppenheimer said, but not about us. That's the price. For what? Becoming myth. The wind howled once like something lost. The two men gathered their coats. They left the shade. They walked across the sand, their shadows trailing behind like broken spears, and the desert forgot them. Thank you.
Hello, I'll be reading The Old Testament Grunge by Rob Luke. On a drunken Saturday night, as I waited out March, the month my dad would die from cancer, a radioactive spider, an older woman, bit me. She, a noble false widow, poisoned me with lust. I developed superhuman strength, speed, and the ability to cling to guilt and shame. Funeral leave for my dad arrived like black fog. Another woman in our pre-press department, an apprentice of rum and smoke. My age but carrying the gill of dog years was offered up like a false idol. With shy grief, I declined her selfish conquest. I was hazed by my peers through the brutal blanket parties, as if beaten with bars of soap wrapped in towels, blows that left not just bruises, but a lasting sense of disgrace. A new hire, a music scholar, emerged in our factory. He offered me Lyle Lovett's latest CD, Joshua Judge's Ruth, a tapestry of southern vignettes. Riddled and raw, my artifact of agony, Lyle Lovett delivered songs of trips to Memphis, Houston, and San Antonio, where I had fled for relief on vacations. Lovett sang of religion, death, jarring heartbreak, and loss. The stories in those songs echoed my pain as I crept into a dark room, lit by red safe lights where sensitive film waited in silence. There was a sign on the light safe revolving door, Achtung, a word from my grandpa's German meaning warning. Joshua, successor to Moses, cautioned of a jealous God. The guttural taunting of my last name echoed in that dark room, like developer dripping from a tray, muddy, as corrosive as toxic sludge. I rejected my coworkers' worship of new vehicles, pink Oxfords, pastel polo shirts, baggy jeans, duck boots, Rockport shoes, pitchers of light beer, tanning beds, gold necklaces, big hair, pull tabs, lottery scratch-offs, nicotine, caffeine, Garth Brooks compact discs actors, makeup, and self-indulgent glamour photos. Everything I opposed and could do without. I prayed for strength. My hair shorn short by my late father's decree left me powerless to bring the temple down upon my enemies and myself. I repented my hatred. My selfless compassion, as in the book of Ruth, was eventually rewarded when I found the promised land. I arrived with enough weather-beaten scar tissue etched like history, only to be rewritten by a newfound gratitude for romance and love with Sarah.
Hello. I will be reading the first part of A Cape for the Princess by Peter DeLilio. That's what they say, that you can hear them screaming every night, all through the night, as if Wake turns first. It's the ones down the hall, then it's the ones a few floors up, all the horrific screams that reach committed. It was a time when, out to a world that does not listen, they are the ones who have no one, they are not visited, they were committed. It was a time when someone could be left in a place like that until they died. There were no laws or medical protocol to stop it. There is a great pity. There is a somber feeling unlike anything in the daily lives of the sane. Nothing is like that subterranean isolation. Nothing is like that separation from ordinary screaming every night, all throughout the night, as if they take turns first. It's the ones a few floors down, then it's the ones a few floors up, chanting a common sorrow like the baying of lost dogs out on a hill in the moonlight, not knowing where they are, not knowing where to go. These people in these white gowns behind these white steel doors remember who they used to be, who they lived with, who they worked with in another time. It was another life, as if all that life were a dream that each of them awoke from, finding themselves here, treated as though they are vegetal specimen in a botanical library, nothing behind their staring eyes except a secret hollow cry of remembrance of what they used to do in lives far removed from the smell of ammonia and the stench of dried vomit, the squeaking of wheelchairs, and the unimaginable loneliness that crawls out of every corner and every shadow. Swallowing their feeble moments of faint recollection, there is an old man who stomps around his room. He bangs violently on the metal guards over the windows of his room. There's nothing there except a mattress. He spreads his excrement over the walls, across the floor. He was a school teacher long ago. Mathematics, he shouts as the attendants bathe him and shave in the bathtub. He tries to drink the dirty bathtub water. It is like majestic beast captured, deprived of its dignity. Freedom having one last moment when it remembers what it could do, a cry of recognition, having been that, is the way the old man utters like a flash of recognition, a fiber of memory, coming back to someone lost in the abyss of Alzheimer's. It is the tiniest fractional glimpse into what happened, what is no more mathematics. There is even a moment of humor. Is it on the house? He asks as the attendant offers him a drink from the hose, a drink of fresh water. Maybe this is a grand illusion, a magician's trickery, a conjurer's incantation from some faraway time. And there are those few precious moments when they think it was all a mistake. My mother is coming back for me. My husband is waiting in the car. Take me home. These are the tragic pulsations of their hopeless thoughts, only to be returned once again to this world of sorrow and confusion. Sometimes the sonority of the screams and the shouts is replaced by a sobbing, an unimaginable, sorrowful chorus of weeping. One would think that they had seen the end of the world or were being tormented by demons, prodding them, humiliating them, confusing them, destroying the tiny grip of reality that they occasionally show it as an inhuman cry, an utterly inhuman cry. She loved to play, to make believe she was a princess. That was her greatest fun. It was so natural to pretend. After all, that is the sovereign realm of all children. Their imagination are the epitome of innocence, invention. No one would see at this early stage that soon irrational fantasy and dangerous mental preoccupations would take over her sweet life. In a few short years, she would begin to hallucinate. Mental preoccupations would begin to hallucinate, hear voices, see things, become antagonistic and violent. It was heartbreaking for her parents to witness such a grotesque transformation. She loved to take the sheet from her parents' bed. She dragged it into her little room, wrapped it around herself. Then she was the princess. Then she had the cape meant only for the princess. She walked slowly up and down in her room. It was the solemn ceremony of the princess entering her castle. Look at all those rose petals laid before her feet. She is the princess. Her cape is magnificent. It is a sacred coronation. Attendants are bringing her the scepter. The king and the queen beam at her with admiration and pride. They are so proud of her, knowing how much she loves the prince, wanting them to be married and be happy. The queen whispers in the king's ear. She's hoping they will have twins. The king has decreed that their wedding day will become an official holiday for the village. No taxes will be collected, and the people do not have to perform their duties or their labors. He is very pleased about his daughter's wedding. He has granted her wish to tell all the townspeople, attend the wedding ceremony, and for each of them receive a gold coin and a dozen roses. The king is a very gracious man. He loves his daughter.
I'll be reading The Language of Grasses by Adam LaCroix. The Greeks believed that grasses told secrets. They spread word of how Zeus gave a foolish king ass's ears. What other secrets do grasses tell? I look out across the estuary. I stop and listen. Whispers fly all around on the gentle breeze, each little rustling a sweet secret or snatch of gossip. You thought no one was around to see, but they saw. The cordgrass tells the cattails, who tell the herons that stalk the clusters like strict professors, who tell the wind to take the word far and wide, until a whole swamp is privy to your sins. I want to know what secrets grasses tell. I want to rustle in the wind. I want to speak the language of the grasses. Shh, shh. Our secrets are not your business, mortal.
I'll be reading my true story. September 11th, 2001 is a day etched in the soul of America. While most remember the horror of collapsing towers and unimaginable national loss, I recall another kind of terror, intensely personal, haunting, and invisible to those watching the news. One day, terrorists attacked my country. I was wrongly arrested in a quiet Minnesota suburb. My pain did not diminish the devastation of others. Rather, it adds to the complex legacy of trauma that 9/11 left behind. For me, it marked the resurfacing of deeply rooted issues in America, the strained, often unjust relationship between Black citizens and law enforcement. My arrest was not a tragic coincidence, but a painful symbol of how bias operates even during national crisis. Strangely, I have no memory of waking up that morning. Psychologists say the mind never truly forgets, but I remember nothing until I was driving home. I recall a neighbor waving to me as I turned into my driveway, and then an officer appeared. He told me there was a warrant out for my arrest. I was stunned. I explained that I had written the courts about an unpaid ticket and was waiting for a response. I even had paperwork in my garage. He read it, nodded, and then said, "I still have to take you in. You can explain all this to the judge." At that time, I didn't know that terrorists had attacked the World Trade Center and the Pentagon. I hadn't seen the footage. I hadn't heard the news. All I knew was that once again, I was facing another strange encounter with the police in my mostly white neighborhood in Woodbury, Minnesota. Before this day, I had already been stopped multiple times for driving too fast, for praying too loudly, for parking in front of my own home, for speaking to children. These complaints, allegedly from neighbors, made me question who was telling the truth, the police or the residents. To avoid further stress, I had even stopped answering my phone. So when the officer approached me on 9/11, I was surprised by the reason, but not by his presence. This was just another incident in a pattern of unwanted scrutiny. As we arrived at the police station, the officer's demeanor suddenly changed. He turned to me with a sharp, almost angry face and said, "You're not going to see the judge this evening." The next morning, inside the station, breakfast was served, but I couldn't eat. A fellow detainee whispered, "You need to help clean up or they'll see you as a problem." I helped. I complied. I waited. When my name was finally called, I was escorted to see the judge. She held the paperwork I had provided. She asked a few questions, then apologized. She said a mistake had occurred. The case was dismissed. She wished me well and hoped I would make it to teach my evening class at the University of Minnesota. I had requested being seen early for this reason. When I got home, I couldn't bear to look at the outfit I had worn. It had been a favorite, a casual blue jean set I used to love. I put it in a garbage bag and hid it in my closet. Eventually, I threw it away. Even fabric can carry trauma. To this day, I remain conflicted. Should I have sued the city for wrongful arrest? Or was the nation in such mourning that I should have accepted my experience as unfortunate footnote to a national tragedy? I believe some officers take their duty seriously, but I also believe there are others who are driven by bias, who express hostility through confusing words and action. The question that haunts me: was I a casualty of 9/11 too, just in a different way?
Hello, my name is Megan, and I'll be reading 2 poems this evening. A devil by any name. The devil doesn't have horns or dance in fire. Hell isn't a place reachable only by death. I met the devil in the back seat. I created hell and lived in it. My devil took its form. He wore a familiar face. My hell was right here on earth. He disguised himself, and I played the fool. I lived in the fire, but I ignored the burns. I fed the flames that kept me warm. I went back. A chapter, a book, the shelf. The shelf, a quarter full, each book, full pages, and a hardcover. Chapter 2022, graduated, educated, employed. I snap on my brush belt and clock into work, flexible, 50 hours a week. Chapter 2023, moved out, committed, family. A soft jingle of my new puppy's collar, flexible, 40 hours a week. Chapter 2024, devoted, educated, and employed, the scent of the melted wax of my 21st birthday candles. I went back. Financial aid, a backpack, college campus. I left the job I loved. I went back to school. Class schedule, homework, library, started 2 new jobs. I went back to school. Laundry, the dishes, make the bed, pay the rent. What about homework? I'm going to be home late. Make dinner, vacuum, we're out of milk, pay the rent. What about studying for that test? You look so tired. Take the dog out, date night, the dryer broke. Pay the rent. How will I have time to write my paper? Let's stay in tonight. I went back. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming out tonight, and thank you for the 10th Muse staff. This is a great publication. I am Kenny Retzel. I am a proud 2003 Clark alum. I am joined here with who may or may not have been the inspiration for my story, and this is Zaylee Retzel, and she will be a proud member of the Clark community beginning in the fall of 3033, we just figured out.
I just miss him so much. I just miss him so much, she says between sobs. You'll be okay. Loss is tough, but it's important to remember the good times, I tell her. There will never be another like Joshua, and I can't even be there for his funeral to say goodbye, she continues. It is my daughter's first real encounter with death, and why did it have to happen while we're on vacation? She brightens a bit and asks, do you think Grandma would say a few words so he knows he's not alone? I assure her that is a wonderful idea. So I call my mother to tell her the plan. She sounds exasperated. I plead, saying it would mean the whole world to her granddaughter. What am I supposed to say about a dead fish you only had for 2 weeks?
Hello, beautiful people. My name is Brina Leo. I'll be reading Death by Absence, a poem I wrote a couple years after a brain injury. I can decide, I don't know, and still put in the effort to give myself the best chance. I broke my head, I broke my heart, I broke my life. I came back though. It took me entirely too long to come back from the void, but I did it. When I came back, there was so much tar and ash. Everything I always wanted and dreamed about, broken. It will never be as it once was, and we will never love as we once did. Thank you.
Hello, thank you for having me. I will be reading 2 poems, one titled To Love, to Be Loved, and the other is Grief. Love is scary. It's hard to let yourself be completely vulnerable, to let yourself be one with the hands of another. The risk and fear and utter world-shattering uncertainty that it comes with, the pain that it comes with. For me, it's all worth it. The knife of love. Having the knowledge that everyone, inevitably, and most assuredly, goes away in some way or another, yet allowing yourself to love. I look at you with tears in my eyes as I push the knife deeper. I look at you with a heart that has undergone tremendous pain, a heart that is so scared to love, but would never, ever show it. So, I say again, with tears in my eyes and my head held high, I love you, and with that, you have my loyalty. With that, you carry my heart, as do I yours. With that, you have my undying gratitude. With that, you have a forever home that is insulated with the most pure of arms as a security blanket. The figurative knife that was rigorously planted in me, leaving merely the realest scar one can obtain, is happily at home here. Love is a risk that you take in this life, to love and to be loved, a treasure that money cannot buy. Grief. To know and to love so deeply, to care and honor someone so intensely, to be so unfathomably and immensely in love with someone or something, and then lose that thing. It hurts. Hurt from once holding someone you loved and no longer being able to. Hurt from having a good or bad day, but cannot share it. Hurt from not being able to check on them every day. Grief is like the unseen shadow. Grief is like the unseen shadow that follows us around. Grief is like having a rock in your shoe that you forget about until you move a certain way. Grief is like looking in the crowd and missing that one face. Grief is, in every way, a fever dream, an inescapable fever dream that chases you around as you attempt to figure out how to live a normal life again. Grief is like a butterfly. It begins in a cocoon. We sit in it. We wrap ourselves in it. We eat, sleep, live, breathe it. Then one day, we break out of our shell and go out into the world again. New, different, forever changed. We are still the entity in the cocoon, but now we are a little better. It never goes away. Grief. We never forget about it, but we do figure out how to walk again, how to smile again, how to breathe again, though it may feel a little heavier this time. Grief, to grieve, to live. Thank you.
"2014" by Kate Cadlick. It was the year I stared at the ceiling, the year I ate a bowl after bowl of microwave noodles, the year I never painted my fingernails. It was the year of Ebola, of Gone Girl, the year I brainstormed baby names with strangers on the internet. Not because I was pregnant or even close to being, just as a fantasy to keep something akin to content. Cordelia, Jessamine, Arabella. Don't tell me you don't feel more alive after testing those syllables on your tongue. It was the year I walked shelter dogs in the woods, the year I foraged for poems in all the campus buildings. It was the year I almost settled for a boy, with half my GPA. A boy who probably doesn't know what a poem is. It was the year I insisted I liked soccer, the year of mojitos, of kittens, of blacklist dresses. It was the year the ghosts gathered in dusky corners, and we all pretended not to notice.
Bartered Hearts by Kate Cadlick. My ticker reupholstered with red and white gingham, yours encased in metal, which should have been glass. Don't help my eyes anymore. You just muddy my view of you and the world. I know you wonder how it feels to have a soft, printed heart, and honestly, I won't propose a trade. But I'd miss your ironclad core, might even miss my own tenderness.
Good evening, everyone. Today I'll be reading The New Loneliness. The last warm evening, the little flowers peeked their heads up as a boy ran past in athletic shorts. The new loneliness waltzed in under the sound of the lawnmower as I traced the words on my wine glass with my pointier finger. Then it comes to me, someday I'll be a mother, and I'll never unbecome one. Even mothers who lose their children carries their ghosts like stones in their shoes.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Katie Fisher.
25-year member of the Clark English Department. I got to teach alongside people like Sarah McAlpin, Barbara Kuchera, and Pat Nolan, longtime BVM friends, outstanding people. When I came to Clark as a student myself, I intended on majoring in marketing and business. I was going to go to New York. I was going to wear business suits. I was going to be wealthy. And then I fell in love with literature. This is what I experienced in my gen ed classes, that most of my students came to Clark to major in something other than what they majored in. And the reason they switched, because of the general education, humanities, and arts classes. Sadly, that's not going to happen anymore. I put a call out to about 45 people, maybe 50 people, to contribute to a multi-voiced essay called My Clark. I was happy that 20 responded with portions to contribute. Another 15 or so said they would love to contribute, but unfortunately they were too broken by the news that their departments were no longer going to be existing. So we've got these 20 writers. It was my job to try to pull those together, not into one essay, but into 20 individual voices. So I worked toward shaping it in such a way that some subject areas come together, some emotional areas come together, and then my part was to write the patching pieces that lean forward. So when you hear my voice tonight, I'm leaning forward into what you'll hear next. I'm joined by Colin Munster. I'm glad he raised his hand because who would know who he was otherwise. Colin was a drama major at Clark. He also was on staff here working with technology and Andy Bellings. He's an outstanding writer, and in his role as dramatist is also going to be a wonderful reader. I'm also joined by Emily Chapman. Emily is a former English major and will read her piece on this. I'm joined also by Carrie Piper. Carrie is a drama major who also contributed her poetry and will read that. She'll also be reading a piece by Ellen Gabrieleschi, longtime drama teacher here at Clark. And finally, I'm very happily joined by Anna Kelly. Anna Kelly was the reason that I was able to retire from Clark. She came on board as an excellent writer herself and the creator of the 10th Muse magazine.
Thank you, Katie. I recently read a book by Rebecca Solnit titled The Beginning Comes After the End. The five of us stand together tonight because when the news of the end of the arts and humanities at Clark hit in November, as Katie said, she began an email, a whole fleet of them, I imagine, calling upon alums, students, and faculty from these departments to write something. The volume of responses she received is a testament to the depth and strength of this community. To our contributors, it is truly an honor to read your heartfelt words tonight. Close to a decade ago, Katie and I were at an event at the Museum of Art where I gave a reading of an essay I had written. She didn't know me that night, but knew that she was about to end her career at Clark, and in me, she saw a beginning. I became her successor. I agreed to take on the 10th Muse for the first years and was followed by others after I left, including Steve and Eric. Steve and Eric and all of this year's 10th Muse staff, thank you so much for this evening. So when our collective epilogue ends tonight, I invite everyone here to dream up the beginning that comes after this end. Continue fighting the good fight, friends, now more than ever.
Hold your applause on this until the very end, because the essay itself is read within, one context. And so it begins, My Clark. Catherine Lawler, BVM. When the sisters completed the long river passage and arrived on the banks of the little town of Dubuque on September 5th, 1843, They unloaded their most precious possession, a piano. This invaluable item would be included in all the schools the sisters established as they brought education to the families of miners, trappers, and farmers along the western frontier.
Will Kelly. I have many fond memories of my time at Clark, the people and the education, and could fill pages reminiscing all about it. But one memory that has been on my mind in recent weeks is of something much more banal. Early in my freshman year, several people were engaged in light gossip about a student who had briefly attended Clark and transferred to another school. The memory is faded and fragmentary, a garbled transmission from a different time in my life, but there was something about the exchange that my subconscious must have felt worth holding on to. This student was a tennis player who left because the program was being discontinued. An art student thought this was a strange reason to transfer. How would you feel if they closed the art department right after you got here? They were asked. You mean cutting the liberal arts from a liberal arts college? They responded. We all laughed because it seemed like an absurd prospect. At the time, it was.
Mary Frances Clark embodies spiritus, the breath of life into humanity. Through faith and philosophy, arts and humanities, that vibrant spirit echoes throughout Clark's first 182 years.
Susan Dolter. At 18, I vowed to be a self-supporting woman. Clark was there. At 28, I floundered. Clark was there. At 50, I longed for that next step. Clark was there. At 66, I retired. Clark was there. Clark has always been there. Sometimes the only way you know how you got to where you are is by looking back at where and who you were. Who I have become is who I learned to be at Clark. It strikes me that, a phrase borrowed from Sister Sarah McAlpin, the mission of Catholic higher education is to teach the Beatitudes. The core values upon which Clark was founded are subscripts of the Beatitudes, and when you see them brought to life in a community where teachers and learners are one, a small miracle happens. You too begin to live them. Mission accomplished. I think of Josh Groban's song, You Raise Me Up. Clark raised me up so I could stand on mountains and walk on stormy seas. Whether I was on Clark's shoulders or simply in her welcoming arms, she raised me up to more than I thought I could be. I hope that raising up continues. Brian Zygmunt, quote, "The kindness and concerns of the BVM sisters seeps into the walls of the school and the students can feel it," end quote. A Clark College professor emailed this to me upon my first visit to campus. He captured truth. Clark was not just a college, it was a community of learners, of teachers. A community entirely committed to supporting the students we had the honor to teach and watch grow, receiving its life from the core values of freedom, education, charity, and justice. Certainly, the kindness and concerns of the BVM sisters did seep into the walls. It was not just the students who felt it, I felt it. I silently wept when I exited my office on 3rd floor Eliza Kelly Hall the last time. I knew I was unlikely to find a similarly caring community anywhere else. I have not. Despite my absence from the general orbit of Mary Ellen Herbst, the core values continue to frame my personal and professional life. I am ever thankful. In this, Clark lives on as strong as ever.
Echoes of sound, image, and insight leap from walls, rivers, mountains, and out of crevices. Pausing, they return, perhaps a moment or even years later, springing to life with new awareness.
When I first sat down in Gary Arms's office as an awkward freshman, I knew that I wanted to teach, but I couldn't decide between math and English. A job would certainly be waiting for me as a math teacher, but I just couldn't let go of my love of reading and writing. Gary helped me develop a plan to major in English, math, and secondary education. That meeting showed me that regardless of what the world says, following passions always works out. If I hadn't majored in math, I wouldn't have become good friends with Angie, later my wife, who majored in math. If I hadn't majored in English, I wouldn't have the teaching job I've enjoyed for 15 years, continuing my passion for Catholic education. I have been teaching both subjects. While math is useful for students, English allows them to struggle with issues of the world, past and present. I will miss a Clark University where English has the chance to form others the way it formed me. I'd been in honors English classes in high school, but my strategy then, skimming online chapter summaries 10 minutes before class, wasn't getting me very far at Clark University. Katie Fisher called me into her office. She asked if I'd written an essay myself. After I convinced Katie that the work was genuine, the conversation turned to creative writing. I left with a plan to major in English with a focus on writing. I began taking advanced courses with Ann Palelo. Her American literature courses were the most prescient. We read memoirs of enslaved people, indigenous accounts of American expansion, stories told by Chicano writers, stories differing in perspective to the American history and literature we'd learned in high school. I've been working at a software company for 5 years. My coworkers often ask me to proof emails or make a ChatGPT-generated email sound less ChatGPT. I'm thankful that I went to college before LLMs did our writing and thinking, and social media curated our biases. When I reflect on my time in the English department, I think about the writing courses and how Katie steered me to embrace a skill I barely knew I had. I wonder if students starting their higher education today will get exposure to the nuanced perspectives of this country's history that my cohort experienced from Ann's American literature courses. Ian Livingston.
Echoes reverberate long after footsteps fall across a carpeted hallway, after the poet's and essayist's words shimmy across the page, and after arpeggios rise from piano keys. Philosophical and religious approaches meander through our thoughts, making sense of life's snapshots.
By Anna Kelly. Teaching writing and literature at Clark was the start of my professional career and remains the most consequential work that I have done. Teaching writing as both communication and craft was an extension of the gifts of my own liberal arts education. My Clark was intimate and expansive at the same time. Classroom discussions afforded the exchange of ideas and perspectives in the safety of community. It was where we tried to make sense of things, where we reckoned with the ways our lives were being shaped by the world outside of our own bubble. We forged the values that determine how we'd show up in that world. My Clark was gathering in the Mary Francelarium for each year's release of the 10th Muse, where biology, business, and art majors read from the podium, sharing their stories, making us laugh, reflect, inviting us to listen and to collectively partake in giving life to art and taking life from art. The 10th Muse was born out of the vision of my English department predecessors, and through it, I helped tell Clark's story. My Clark was when students came to college to explore and discover. It was the incredible high a young teacher got from making a student feel as if the top of her head had been taken off by a poem. My Clark will forever be a beautiful time in my life. By Dawn Courtney McCormick. I intended to be an elementary teacher, but Clark also required an academic major. I liked that rigor of a liberal arts college. As a freshman, I was in a small group philosophy class where we researched and presented works of philosophers. We helped design theology and philosophy classes that piqued our interest. We gathered in the Mary Fran parlors to explore what those disciplines had to teach us, the Socratic method of student inquiry. Those were heady days full of queries into things I didn't know. Having to complete credits in an array of 5 academic areas outside of my mathematics major required that I cultivate new interests. My math instructors and my liberal arts instructors taught me how to think, question, reason, find value, and make judgments, logical, moral, and aesthetic. Our world and church need that now more than ever. It defined the character of my Clark. That liberal arts degree from Clark College set me apart. It created opportunities. I am eternally grateful. Elaine Erickson. I chose Clark because I wanted to find myself. I loved English and music but had no major. Those small departments were welcoming tight-knit communities. I was encouraged to embrace arts and humanities. My assigned English advisor listened and welcomed my desire to do a bit of everything. I found mentorship and friendship with my clarinet instructor, who encouraged me to participate in the wind ensemble and clarinet quartet. I earned my music minor. 15 years later, he, other Clark musicians, and I gather at Christmas time, set up our stands outside homes of family and friends, and play carols together into the night. Even majoring in education, I spent evenings in practice rooms in Eliza Kelly, listening to pianos, woodwinds, and voices swelling from beneath the cracks of the doors into the hallway. Clark's annual Christmas concert in the chapel. I walked into the atrium at night, street lamps washing a warm glow over the glimmering snow, my heart beating faster in anticipation of the quiet winter soon being broken by our clarinets with the melody of Bach's Sleepers Awake. Several of those same clarinetists joined together later to play Sleepers Awake in a church balcony as I walked down the aisle at my wedding. That sense of community and camaraderie is Clark's legacy for me.
Nancy and John Leese. During our many years of teaching in the music department at Clark, we were blessed to be part of a thriving community, especially the fine arts community. The arts were Clark College. Students and faculty worked together to produce high-quality performances, develop skills, and expand their knowledge. Clark exported their finest product, their students, on many international choral tours. They even won first place, competing against 23 countries. They served as goodwill ambassadors, breaking down barriers in India, China, Japan, Russia, and Poland. Our students returned, telling us how important these experiences were in their lives and to the people they met. Look around Dubuque and the surrounding areas to see how the arts at Clark have affected the quality of life. The Grand, Bell Tower, Dubuque Symphony, centrally rooted in the schools. The arts were a vital part of Clark University, and we are grateful for having our lives enriched by them.
Shakespeare, Lillian Hellman, Dylan Thomas, Wendy Wassertein, Aeschylus strut across the stage. not tales told by idiots. Their stories echo at office water coolers, at downtown bars, at dinner tables, in classrooms. Echoes roll in waves, one after another, languages that may take years to discern. But then meaning comes of a sudden, with the force of an avalanche.
By Ellen Gebler-Eshi. In 1977, Clark College was different, special. I met Carol Blitchen at the airport. She drove me in her Camaro to my faculty interview. I met various sisters and students at the White House, the arts faculty, and President Maneve Dunham. Exciting, open, genuine, fun people. I walked the creaky oak floors of the second floor EKH, eating lunch in the nuns' cafeteria and wearing overalls because with 5 shows, laundry was low priority. How fortunate I was to be a part of this loving community where I grew like our students did. The arts were everywhere, hallways, classrooms, offices, dorms, and even the lawns. Exceptional people became family. Sister Carol Blitchen, Sister Carmel Zerden, Sister Diane Malone, Sister Bertha Fox, Sister Pat Nolan, Sister Sarah Macfin, Sister Ramona Barak, Doug and Donna Schleicher, John and Nancy Lease, Joe Kleinbriel, Colin Munster, Terry Strata, and Bob Newman. Our students performed at ACTF festivals, receiving accolades, awards, learning a great deal about themselves and their art, and having a damn good time. All our alums, interesting, intelligent, caring, committed, wildly talented, beautiful people. I remember the deaths of campus and alumni friends, loss of our drama program, and ultimately the death of Clark College. I will forever remember the integrity, professionalism, intelligence, love, art, the beautiful community that was Clark College.
My Clark years shaped me musically, but also with a growing sense of purpose and creativity. My home became practice rooms in Eliza Kelly Hall, where I spent hours learning arias, struggling over piano sonatas, and playing and singing for fun. Mostly alone, because sometimes with good friends. I'll never forget the warmth and encouragement I found in John and Nancy Lease, who guided me through voice and piano lessons with patience, humor, and genuine care. Clark offered so many opportunities for a small college, from touring with the choir to performing in Puerto Rico and Japan to taking the stage in operas and musicals in Jansen Music Hall. I learned not only theory, instrumentation, and performance, but also how to communicate emotion, tell stories, and connect with audiences. I felt challenged every day, but I also felt accepted and inspired, surrounded by friends and professors who shared this passion for music. My graduating class was one of the last at Clark with more than 10 music majors. We made the most of it with how many large ensemble performances we were able to put on. Those years were more than just an education. Clark supported me in building a foundation for lifelong growth, creativity, and confidence. More recently, I love that my own children have been able to see me perform in Clark alumni concerts. I hope to always visit and relive the wonderful memories of music at Clark. James Ensler. Jake Tebby. As a graduate of the music education program and current MAE candidate, I was taken aback by the cutting of these programs. I have so many wonderful memories of performances, late night music theory study sessions, music departments, trips to Chicago, Puerto Rico, and Minnesota, countless moments of joy and laughter and tears and sadness. I would not change a thing. Clark made me the teacher, performer, and person that I am today. I fell in love with Clark. The minute I visited, I take pride having hosted 4 Clark student teachers. Each time, the experience was amazing. I learned just as much from them as they hopefully did from me. I know that if it was a Clark student, we would connect right away. I could not have done everything I have without my fellow students and cherished professors. Thank you, Clark.
Across this pale blue dot, hola, salem, kas, salud, ciao, hola, usam, hello, welcomes others in far places, a greeting that unites, that says we share this space. No longer foreign to one another, we celebrate the voices of echoes, languages within our own.
Audra Murfeld. My journey at Clark as a first-generation student began with excitement and uncertainty. I was drawn to courses that kindled my curiosity about different perspectives, people, and places. This led me to majors in English and French, a minor in philosophy, and coursework in Spanish. I never imagined that the support of humanities foundation my professors provided would lead me to a career exploring languages and cultures, traveling the world, and sharing knowledge with others. Clark taught me the value of a well-rounded education and inspired me to advance my studies. I spent a year teaching English in France and later earned a PhD in French. Soon after, I launched my career as a professor and have since taken on academic leadership roles. This path has allowed me to share enriching experiences with countless students and to foster in them a passion for lifelong learning, especially via study abroad. I've led students on transformative experiences to explore history and the human cost of war in France, tackle sustainability and clean water projects in Nicaragua, Guatemala, and Bolivia, and examine impacts of colonization and climate change in Martinique. These experiences highlight the interconnectedness of our world and reflect how my undergraduate education continues to shape efforts to prepare students for global challenges. I am deeply grateful to Clark's humanities programs for planting the seeds of curiosity and confidence that have grown into a lifelong commitment to education and global engagement. Suzanne Poland. A phone call at 7:40 a.m. Sister Josepha Carton anxiously asking where I am. She can't teach class without me, as I was the only student in 4th year classical Greek, Homer's Odyssey. The classical languages department was one classroom on the 3rd floor of Rose O'Toole Hall, not far from the entrance to the convent where some BVM sisters resided. The buildings, gone now, consumed by fire in 1984. I studied microbiology, computer science, philosophy, and art history. The BVM mission began to bring education to all as a pathway out of poverty. There are schools and hospitals in rural areas that would not exist without the sisters who founded and staffed them. I took my love of languages and the profound sense of social justice that I learned from BVMs and fellow students at Clark into an international career in food security. I worked in French, Portuguese, and rudimentary skills in Siswati, Lingala, Kirundi, Amharic, with farmers in Africa joining in efforts to end poverty and hunger. A wonderful career made possible by a combination of liberal arts and science.
Emily Chapman. I teach English at Hempstead High School. My love for literacy and writing flourished in the Clark English curriculum and through the 10th Muse literary magazine. My time at Clark can be summed up in a few words: welcoming, enlightening, diverse, and encouraging. I didn't start with an English major, but I fell in love with literary periods, locations, and people. I learned genres, literary criticisms, how to read texts analytically, and how to write properly. I was co-editor-in-chief of the 10th Muse. I had never participated in any school organization before, but I wish I had done so sooner. The beautiful things people submitted to the literary magazine share raw emotion through prose, paintings, poetry, and more. I utilize every one of these skills every day. To lose any part of the English department or the literary magazine is devastating to students and alumni who dedicated chapters of their lives to it. I have often promoted Clark as a great place to go for higher education. I would hate for that to change, knowing so much heart and soul of campus is being cut. I just hope future generations can get the same amazing experiences that I had. Thank you.
My educational, social, and spiritual experiences at Clark were formative for the person I am today. I would have missed so much had I chosen another college. The friends I made, experiences, professors that influenced me, and foundational education would be unmatched by any other university. At Clark, I pursued every interest, from taking applied studies in voice and guitar, a course on BVM values and heritage, and even surviving a couple of Ann Palelo's English courses. I obtained a high-caliber liberal arts education, exploring several career paths at Clark. I was led by faith to become a law enforcement officer in Dane County, Wisconsin. I'm beyond grateful for the Clark challenges, people, and programs that helped lead me to success in this role. Returning to the Sacred Heart Chapel in March 2024 to marry the woman God chose for me was yet another solidification of Clark's importance. Just as Clark has its roots in freedom, education, charity, and justice, I have my roots in Clark. Skylar Quaid.
I'm Carrie Piper. When I heard, I thought about the buildings. We saw what happened in TDH and behind that door in the tunnel below Mary Jo. These spaces once filled with art and adorned with the signatures of those who lived there, emptied and painted a nice neutral gray. Any realtor will tell you they will sell better that way. It was the people for me, the nun in the back, house left, coughing. Those faces in the early mornings round the table in that beautiful house downtown. The professors who taught me to read, to think, and that young one who told me, write it down. But people don't stay. They graduate, they retire, some are taken away, and all that's left are the buildings. I knew that would happen, but still I hoped that someday I could walk up the stairs in Eliza Kelly and recognize the sweet, dusty scent of clay drying. Overhear the flirty serenade of a guitar through a practice room door. Run my fingers down a list of unfamiliar names, freshly pinned to the corkboard on the third floor. And make it to the top to see people gathered together, creating. And think to myself, that used to be me. But now those people won't be there, nor the sound or the smell. To the next generation, EKH will be that creaky hallway in that old decrepit building between their dorm and class. Inspiration for ghost stories. I hope they tell mine.
Jess Gorlick. This is the end of an era. I began as a studio art and Spanish major. While I was passionate about both, I quickly found my new home in the language and literature department after scoring a gig as a writing tutor during freshman year. I remember how welcoming all the instructors were, even if I didn't belong to their program. I have fond memories of dropping in during open office hours to chat with a philosophy professor about Plato's theory of forms and how it could be applied to the capybara. I remember writers' roundtable sessions that were full of laughter and warmth, and yes, occasional squabbles about whether the Oxford comma is necessary. It is, and I will die on that hill. I remember the day we were informed that a lit mag would be making a comeback. It was a privilege to be on the 10th Muse Resurrection Squad. I cherish the memories of my time as editor and contributor. I remember most the sense of camaraderie that existed among departments. Because Clark is a smaller school, overlap was inevitable. We were all studying different things, and we all came from different walks of life, but we were united in our purpose: to learn as much as possible, to suck the marrow out of life, to become the people we are today. That's the Clark I attended. That's how I choose to remember it.
Joey Stamp. Arriving as blocks of unmolded marble, we joined a small but mighty theater department nestled in Dubuque's rolling green hills. Our first year, we looked to build connections, to make a mark, find a voice, to see the sculpture within. Our second year, we started seeing its outline. We met new faces. We learned how to lead some days and to follow on others. The sculpture emerged not in grand moments, but in small rituals, binding us together. Every weekend, crew hours, rising early to build sets from scratch, hang lights, paint flats. 4 shows a year, every nail driven by our own hands, every curtain raised by our collective effort. By our third year, the rough form took shape, though edges still needed refining. The unknown beyond those walls crept over, closer, but we took solace in each other. We made the daily journey from our dorms through the glass atrium, past the art room where clay sculptures cured and half-finished pieces lined the walls, up the old wood stairs where countless had climbed before us, through hallways of practice rooms where voices filled the void, instruments ran scales, pianos clanged. The cacophony of fresh and varied talents filled the space, creating community among kindred spirits. In our 4th year, the sculpture was nearly finished. Our futures began to take shape. Our legacy began to crystallize. When we left, we carried the chisel marks with us, polished, purposeful, permanent.
Echoes of our being at this place in our time linger softly, floating across a theater stage, carpeted hallways, language labs, performance and study abroad classrooms, 10th musings, and in corridor conversations, encircling singers and speakers and writers and actors and believers and pianists and thinkers. I see you. I feel you. I will hear you forever. Thank you.
Some closing remarks first. Let's have a round of applause for the readers, contributors, and especially Eric Wold and this year's editor-in-chief, Kirsten Cruiser. You did an outstanding job. When I started thinking about these closing remarks, I didn't know what I really wanted to say. There's so much about the 10th Muse that I hold dear. Here we go. My work with my co-conspirator, Eric Wold, which started in the summer of 2019, over a couple beers, I think, at Dimensional. My work with students and the sense of pride I know we all feel for being a part of something that for 16 years has been so important to the culture of Clark community. But then I learned from Kirsten that I would be reading Adam LaCroix's lovely poem, The Language of the Grasses, which I immediately liked when I first read it last year. English professors most likely will see the word grass in a poem and think of the great American poet Walt Whitman, who in 1855 published Leaves of Grass. Adam's poem, like Whitman's work, sees and hears the mystery of wild grass in estuaries, in hidden meadows, on prairies and plains. The poem understands that kind of grass as a keeper of secrets, speaking in the wind its own language of cycles and renewal, as we mortals try to reckon with anger, frustration, and hardship, yes, but also the strange magic of what it means to be human. I love that image. Students will know I love that image, and my wife and daughter know that I spend lots of my summers in Iowa sitting out in fields staring at grass. That's kind of not a joke. And I think it's fitting at this juncture to consider endings in such terms. Things change. People and traditions come, and then they go. But the work, and I've learned this from Eric Wold, who taught me 10 years ago, the value of work. But the work we've all done together, excuse me, on the 10th Muse, the amazing work across the years by people like Katie Fisher, Anna Kelly, Ann Palello, Emily Goodman, Eric Wold, myself, and so many creative students, contributors, and supporting staff, faculty, and administrators should remind us of how special it is when we can be let in on that secret, even if for just a short time. Whether the 10th Muse ends, goes dormant for a spell, or turns into something else entirely in the future, I hope and I think that its spirit of creativity and collaboration, like the mysterious language of the grasses, continues to whisper of its place as an essential part of Clark and this community. I just want to say again, thank you all so much for being here. Thank you for the students for being here and for being part of tonight's event. It's been a great honor of mine. Thank you. Have a good night. Have a good night. Thank you. Have a good night.